Diligent Fingers present the Viewpoint Podcast. Conversations about life and music.
Wagwan people, what you saying? It is I, Diligent Fingers, and welcome to the first episode of the Viewpoint Podcast. The first episode of the new podcast for the new decade. Welcome to 2020. Hopefully it's not too late, depending on when this actually comes out and stuff like that. But yeah, a new adventure, a new exciting sort of thing to explore, but something that has been on my mind, something that I've kind of touched on and tested out a couple of times. If there's people listening that follow me on YouTube and stuff, then you would have seen that I've already done like a couple of sort of mock podcasts, more sort of personal, like YouTube channel rants and stuff like that. But this is going to be a proper podcast. I'm not sure how frequent it's going to be. I have got a few guests lined up in regards to a few more episodes that are going to be coming down the line. But, you know, in terms of what this podcast is all about, it's all about conversations, having real conversations about life, music, and mental health. Basically, it's something that in terms of mental health, it's something that I've been sort of really opening up about the last sort of couple of years. And, you know, with it also being in association with Stand Up Speak Out, I think it's like a brilliant platform for people to be able to tell their stories. Whether it's regarding mental health, whether it's regarding discrimination, racism, abuse, you know, anything really, sexism, anything really, you know, conversations about sexuality, just providing a platform really for people to just talk about their experiences. You know, I might as well use that as a segue to sort of do a little bit of housekeeping and sort of lay out what the point of this podcast is, and it is really just to have conversations. I'm not trying to be any kind of authority within mental health. I'm not trying to be any kind of figurehead or anything like that. I'm not good with statistics. I'm not good with, you know, knowing everything about every type of mental health disorder or illness that is out there. But what I've realised through talking about my experiences is that it really does help. It really does help. On the beginning of me realising what was my mental health journey, or what was going to be my path towards mental health recovery, was the fact that I didn't feel like I had anybody that spoke to my personal experience. And in regards to my personal experience, I'm someone that suffers from depression, but also PTSD due to a trauma that happened to me over 10 years ago now. And stuff, which is really weird to say that it was over 10 years ago. But I've also been, you know, suffering from depression for over a good like 20 years now, probably since I was about, say, 13, 14 was when I started to realise something in my head was wrong. You know, even though I didn't understand it, that was the point in time when I started to realise something was wrong. And, you know, in terms of my personal experience with PTSD, it's not something that I'm going to get into today. But, you know, in terms of what I went through, my traumatic experience, I didn't feel like I could find anybody that had a voice that spoke to my personal experience. But through talking about my own personal experiences and being open about it in the last couple of years, I've seen that just having conversations really do help. Not necessarily that I had the answers, or, you know, I'm relatable to everybody. That's not necessarily like the goal of what I'm trying to do here, or the goal of me sort of speaking out. It's just literally like the fact that of me being open about my experiences, and then through that being able to speak to other people that would get in touch with me about their experiences, that was where I realized that, okay, there is value in just having real conversations, in just having, real talks about what we actually go through, especially in regards to, forms of discrimination, mental health, things that aren't really talked about enough. So the point of this podcast is really just to add to the conversation, add to the dialogue. I don't want anyone to come into this thinking that I have any sort of tips or quick fire sort of, remedies or exercises or anything like that. If I do, come across something that works for me that I feel may work for other people, then I will definitely share that information, most definitely. If I feel like something has worked for me, or a realization that I have come to, maybe a realization that, some people, like other people, may not have come to, do you know what I mean? Then I'll definitely share those parts of my experiences, most definitely. But I don't want anyone to think that, I have any answers. I'm still sort of I'm definitely still figuring out things myself. I'm still on my own path of recovery, of sort of self-realization and awareness, really and truly. And, hopefully being able to just share my experiences will help other people. And that's it really. But I do feel like having these conversations are very, very important, and that's why, as much as there's been a lot of fear in starting this podcast, and which is why the first episode is going to talk about mental health and fear within mental health. I do feel like it's very important. It's helped me. It's been very therapeutic for me. As well as, being very gratifying to see that, even if it's just a little tiny bit, just to see that it's helped other people in some way, is amazing. I want to be able to carry that on. And just to clear up a bit more, sort of housekeeping, this podcast is in association with Stand Up Speak Out, which is a non-profit record label and budding charity set up by my good friend Owen Hainsley, aka Madrush, in the wake of his really sort of terrible situation that he went through in regards to immigration, but as a result of that situation, he's come up with the amazing idea of providing a platform for people to tell their stories through music, and that's why I thought it'd be a great idea to sort of bring a conversational platform to it as well. But big shout to Owen Hainsley, aka Mad Rush. Big shout to Mike Burgess. Big shout to 21st Century Tribe. Big shout to Josh Sleeman. Everybody that's involved with Stand Up Speak Out. Also, this is in association with One Blood Tattoo Shop, a brand new tattoo shop that's been open for a year in Manchester now, run by my good friend George Fisher, aka Metal Man. And also in association with Block to Block Entertainment. They've been a big part of, my musical journey and my sort of journey within the Manchester music scene. So, of course, they had to be, involved in this as well. And also, just want to point out that this is an adult podcast. This is an over 18s podcast. Young people can get involved, but do be aware that there will be some strong language involved in these podcasts and stuff. And if that's something that you're not particularly happy to hear, then maybe this podcast isn't for you. But again, it is all about having real, candid conversations about things that we go through in life, But yeah, let's get into it really, because again, I feel like fear, everyone deals with fear. Everyone deals with, things that they're scared of within their lives and stuff like that. But I feel like when mental illness is involved, I think it's kind of heightened tenfold. It's something that is reoccurring a whole lot more when there is an ailment that, one, everybody can't see, and two, is so hard to explain to somebody that hasn't experienced a mental health illness or anything like that, it's so hard to explain to other people, and that creates its own sort of issues and fears within itself. You know, the first time that I sort of realised that there were things that I was scared of in regards to what was going on in my brain was, you know, when I was younger, when I first sort of realised, you know, I grew up in Manchester. I grew up in Moss Side, Manchester. Initially, first it was in Cheetham Hill, North Manchester. You know, in 1981, I was born to my single mum, and I was conceived through, pain. I was conceived through pain. I was conceived through a very horrible situation that my mum had to go through. But, I came up through as, my mum brought me up as a single mother. We moved to Moss Side when I was around 3 years old, and my mum got married, and then I had 2 younger brothers and 2 younger sisters, and that, and thinking back, growing up, I realised that it was hard, but thinking back, it didn't feel like it was hard. Yeah, we didn't have much money. Yeah, we did struggle. I remember having, really budget meals. Do you know what I mean? For like the 3, 4, 5 of us that were in the home and stuff like that, but it didn't feel like we were struggling. It didn't feel like we were working class, and, it didn't feel like we were lacking in any way. You know what I mean? Like, as much as kids may have taken the mick out of me in school, in primary school and in high school and stuff like that, it didn't feel like we didn't have what we needed, if you know what I mean. Like, it didn't feel like, I look back at pictures of like me and my brothers and sisters and all the clothes, and it didn't look like, we were wearing poor clothes and we didn't have much money. And that's one thing that I do have to credit my mum for. She did really surround us with love, like completely engulf us in love. And we didn't feel like, we were any different to the other kids that were in our area. And growing up, it was a multicultural area. Moss Side was a multicultural area. There was a lot of black people, a lot of Asians, a lot of, different races in Moss Side and stuff. So, there wasn't much really in the early years of growing up as a toddler and stuff like that. There wasn't much that really, everything sort of changed when my mum and my stepdad started going through a divorce. That was when everything changed. That was when I found out that, he wasn't actually my real dad. He was my stepdad. And that was through a very spiteful way. As it often is when, it's a bad divorce, it's a bad breakup between parents and stuff. And, parents can end up just saying and doing things and using children as a way to hurt their ex-partner and stuff like that, which is horrible. But that was when I noticed that, the happy home that we had wasn't so happy anymore. And as a result of things being quite bitter and quite violent and destructive during the divorce, me and my younger brothers and sisters ended up going into care. And we went from, a predominantly multicultural area, black area, Jamaican, African area, to a predominantly white area. After some time of spending some time in like children's homes and going through a couple of like different foster homes, we did settle on one foster home. And then after, I think it must have been 8-9 months or something like that, my brothers and sisters ended up going back to their dads, and I ended up staying in foster care. And that was the first time where I felt completely sad and like things were completely out of control. As much as I begged to go back to my mum's, I was told I couldn't go back to my mum's because my mum wasn't fit to look after me, which I later found out was complete and utter bullshit, really, and stuff. But, at the time, that was what I was told. And, I felt for my mum, but I was being so far away from home and stuff like that. It was just sort of heartbreaking. And yeah, I feel like I got really depressed at that point because I just didn't understand why we were taken out of a place where we knew what we knew so well, away from all of our friends, or at least away from me, being away from all my friends that I grew up with, away from everything that I knew, having my brothers and sisters taken away from me, you know. And I didn't want to go back. I didn't want to go back to my stepdad's, because as far as I was concerned, he was the reason why everything broke down so much, and he was the reason why we went into care, because he was hurting my mum so much and stuff. So there was, and as well as, you know, the realization of him not being my actual real dad, he's, you know what I mean? And, you know, there was so much stuff going on in my mind, and then being in this completely foreign home. And I have to give a shout out to, you know, my foster family at that point in time, like Linda. Like, she was an amazing foster mum. Foster dad, not so much, because he ended up having an affair, and then they ended up getting a divorce. And yeah, anyway. But in terms of the foster care that we were in, we were looked after. Like, we didn't want for anything once again. You know, I can't complain, you know what I mean? It wasn't, I know some people go through really horrible situations going through the care system in the UK, but I can't say I had a horrible situation. I had a few emotional situations where it was a bit confusing after a while. But yeah, that was the point that I realised, okay, you know, I'm not happy. There are reasons why I'm not happy. But even though I would find things that would make me happy, I just wouldn't feel happy inside, you know, and I just didn't know what was going on at all. And I think that was the point I realised that I was really different. I was different to my brothers and sisters, because when they found out that, you know, their dad wasn't my dad, yeah, kids can be cruel. Do you know what I mean? And we'd get into arguments and the whole, oh, you're only my half brother anyway. Do you know what I mean? You're not the same as us. And, you know, things like that would get thrown about between siblings and, you know, young kids and friends and stuff like that, you know. So, like, but that made me realise that I was different to my family. You know, being in a predominantly white area, I experienced racism. There were times that I would come home from school and I would just get beaten up. You know what I mean? Oh, you're the new kid. You're the new nigger. Do you know what I mean? I remember after a year of living, you know, where I was living in foster care, after about a year and a half, I remember just walking down the street, coming home from my friends, and I saw the same guys that always used to beat me up and call me nigger and this, that, and the other and stuff. And they were like, oh, I'd heard that one of them had robbed a car the night before and the stuff, and was going around joyriding in Ermston and stuff like that, but I didn't know that they'd been arrested. And they saw me and they just started, oh, you were the one who grassed me up to the police for robbing that car. I'm like, what? And boom, like 4 or 5 guys beating the shit out of me. Do you know what I mean? And that was where that was another reason where I realised that I was different, because I'd never experienced that. I'd never experienced anyone looking at me in that kind of way, looking at me, seeing the colour of my skin and being like, you're different and you should get hurt for being different. Do you know what I mean? And, you know, all of these things accumulating just got to the point where I started to become fearful that I just didn't matter. You know, I wasn't conceived through love. I was conceived through pain. I wasn't planned. You know, as I'm growing up in my teenage years, I'm watching, you know, documentaries on Channel 4. I used to be really into like documentaries and finding out about what's going on in the world around us. You know what I mean? I used to be big into MTV Raps and seeing what's going on in America, watching all these mad music videos being made. So the world outside was always like a big interest to me, and especially space and stuff, and, you know, what's going on in people's lives. I don't know why, like, I sort of started to develop like a sort of sympathy towards like my mum and my foster mum, and especially seeing both of them go through a divorce, and do you know what I mean, how much pain they were going through. I started to develop like an empathy for other people and stuff. So I'd watch like documentaries about mental health, I'd watch documentaries about crime, and I came across documentaries talking about rape. And, because that was an element of my conception, realizing what rape was and what that does to women, how that harms women physically as well as psychologically, that really started to affect me in a huge way. And I started to realize that, okay, that's what my mum went through. I'd seen in these documentaries that, women would have abortions. Thank God that she didn't abort me, but I wouldn't blame her if she did. And then I think that was the moment where it was like, okay, my life doesn't matter. Like, I'm a mistake. I'm not supposed to be here. Do you know what I mean? Like, I'm taking up space on this world. Do you know what I mean? Like, I laugh about it, but that's how I truly started to feel at those times. And there was a massive fear that would creep in that would be all I would amount to. Like, I didn't matter and I just wouldn't matter. You know what I mean? Like, I'm here, and if anything good happens for me, because at that point it felt like my life was just going to be shit from there on in. I'm away from my family. I'm with this new family. And as much as I'm being looked after, they're not my family. They're not my brothers and sisters. They're not my mum. They're not my dad or whatever. Nearly every other day I'm being called this, that or the other, or getting beaten up because I'm black. Do you know what I mean? And that, like, whenever me and my brothers and sisters fall out, like, I'm only the half brother, and you're not even full blood. Do you know what I mean? Felt like for Hermione being called a mudblood, and do you know what I mean? Like, shit like that, And it just all started to develop in my brain that I just didn't matter. I just didn't matter. And is that all that my life is going to be? I'm just here and I don't make any difference whatsoever, And then over time, just seeing the things that me and my family would go through, like, domestic violence, robberies, police raids, and do you know what I mean? Stuff like that, because we're not perfect. I'm not going to paint myself as being perfect. I've been a naughty boy. I've broken the law a couple of times, this, that, and the other when I was younger, growing up, not knowing any better, being angry at the world around me. Do you know what I mean? Like, I'm not perfect. Nobody in this world is perfect. We've all done things that we've all made mistakes, and we've all done things that, we may regret later on in life. Thankfully, I can say there's not many of those things that I regret, because I understand now the situation that I was in, and I understand in some cases there just wasn't a choice that I could make. Certain things just had to go the way that they went, like me going into foster care. I couldn't control that. I had no control as a child what happened to me and my brothers and sisters as children, as teenagers. We had no control over whatsoever. So the reactions that we had, they were just what happened. But I'm older now. I know better. I have more control over my life now. But back then, yeah, that's how I felt. I felt like I just didn't matter, and I wasn't going to matter. I was just going to grow old, and, that's it. Nothing remarkable was ever going to come from me. Even with me being so into music was a massive thing for me. Do you know what I mean? But it was never anything where I thought, this is going to get me out the hood. This is going to change people's opinion about me. This is going to change my life in any way, shape or form. It was just something that I just loved doing. I love creating. I love creating music. Do you know what I mean? I love writing lyrics. I love producing. I love DJing. I love hosting events. And again, it's nothing to do with I want to be known. Do you know what I mean? Like, it's nothing to do with me wanting to be known. If anything, where it comes to in terms of what I want for my music is for my music to be out there. If I could be like MF Doom or anyone who makes a point of not showing their face, but their music is what's doing the talking, and music is what's catching people, I would definitely do that. If I could erase all the pictures in the world of me in regards to doing with music or in regards to social media or anything like that, I would definitely do that. And it would just be the music that was out there. Because even in terms of that, like, yeah, even from an early age, in terms of like being known in music, I didn't want to be known. And then, I've seen when dirty secrets come out about celebrities and this, that, and the other. And do you know what I mean? As much as people may say that they're strong for coming out about these experiences and this, that, and the other, when it's just put out there by paparazzi and stuff like that, it's never a choice that the artist makes. Do you know what I mean? But they have to ride it out. They're forced to just ride it out and try and deal with it as best as they could. And that scared me. Funny to say that now, but back then it scared me. I didn't want people to know what had happened to my family. I didn't want people to know that's where I had come from. Do you know what I mean? I didn't want people to know that. Do you know what I mean? Like when I remember watching, like, what comes to mind? I remember watching like the life story of Busta Rhymes. Do you know what I mean? It's like Busta Rhymes was born in Brooklyn, New York, to Jamaican father and mother, and do you know what I mean? And they were happily married until whatever. I didn't have that. Do you know what I mean? Like it would be like, oh yeah, Diligent Fingers was born in, you know what I mean, Moss Side, Manchester, UK. To first generation, do you know what I mean, Jamaican immigrant mother and father unknown. Do you know what I mean? Like I didn't want, so it's like, it's funny me saying that now because I'm talking about it now, like I'm talking about sort of those experiences now, but I didn't want that to be part of a legacy, if anything. Do you know what I mean? So in terms of fame scared me. Do you know what I mean? Fame really, even now, fame does scare me. Like what fame does, how it changes people. Do you know what I mean? Like fame is a very hard thing to deal with, to tackle, and to sort of manage without it sort of changing you in a way. Do you know what I mean? Especially if you don't come from nothing and then all of a sudden you have everything, not to say that that's what happens to everybody that becomes famous, but there are a lot of examples of fame really affecting people in a negative way. And now I realize that it all comes down to how happy the people are in themselves and what they see fame as, what fame actually means to them. If you're using fame as a way of filling a hole that you have in your heart, or fame is what's going to make you happy and what's going to solve all of your emotional problems and stuff like that, like it's becoming more and more apparent now that it doesn't. Like, do you know what I mean? In terms of money, like I'm scared to have a lot of money. I am really scared to like have a lot of money because it would send me absolutely paranoid. Do you know what I mean? Like, I wouldn't know. When people get popular and when people come into a lot of money, they attract people. And I wouldn't know whether people are actually coming around me for me or because I've got money. Like, these are real fears that I have just in the general world. Do you know what I mean? But I think they're emphasized more so. Like, those fears that I'm talking about there, they're emphasized more so because of how I see myself, how I have grown up. Do you know what I mean? What I've experienced growing up. You know what I mean? Like, and they've shaped how I look at, the world around me. So that's like from like, say, 11, 12, do you know what I mean? Up until like 19 years old was... I'd moved out at that point and I'd really started to understand, do you know what I mean, what my mum had gone through, what my mum was going through, do you know what I mean, how much she did struggle, how much we did have but we didn't have compared to, do you know what I mean, other families that were, out there. You know what I mean? I started to realise a lot of things, and I think that was when I realised, like, yeah, something is definitely wrong. I'm smoking so much weed. I've been introduced to Jack Daniels. I'm drinking so much alcohol. I'm experimenting with drugs. I'm taking, ecstasy. I'm taking cocaine. I'm taking, mushrooms and that. Thankfully, I've got a really low tolerance, and, I just didn't need any of that stuff. So it was just experimenting. But thankfully, I do give thanks that I didn't get hooked on any of that kind of stuff. Do you know what I mean? But I went through a very sort of turbulent time, especially around 18, 19. I remember taking a good 3-4 year break away from my family. I didn't speak to or see any of my family for a good 3-4 years because, I was scared that, when my mum sees me, does she see him? Does she see the person that raped her? Do I remind her of him? Do I have any of his features? Do I have any of his mannerisms? Do you know what I mean? I was scared that I was a source of pain for the people that were close to me. And it was something that I couldn't really get away from growing up anyway, because it was I felt like I was getting special treatment. So I'm the first son, the first grandchild, I'm the first nephew. And I realise now a lot of the favoritism that I got was because I was the first. And, growing up, I was really into school, I was really into literature and stuff like that. And I looked like I would be the first person to go to college and, this, that and the other. You know what I mean? I was really good with fixing things, so I was really helpful with the family. Anything broke, I'd figure out a way of being able to fix it, or at least getting it to a working order before you need to replace it. Or I'm just good with figuring out stuff. But there was definitely, it was something that I just couldn't get away from, because I felt like there was always a reminder that I was different. There was always a reminder that I was separate to everybody else. I did feel like a bit of an outsider. And I think because I stayed in foster care as well, and I started to sort of see different things compared to, say, if I was still living, in the hood, if I was still living in the ends in a predominantly black area, because I started to see things, differently. Again, I'd grown up to a point where, because my grandma, my granddad, my mum, you know what I mean, and my stepdad probably suffered a lot of sort of racial discrimination as they were coming up, especially my gran and my granddad when they first came over to the UK from Jamaica, and stuff. I'd sort of been brought up to believe not to trust other races and stuff, and that was kind of reinforced when I went into foster care and I moved to a completely different area. That was reinforced with getting beaten up every day and getting called racial slurs all the time for a good 4.5-5 years. But at the same time, there were certain things that happened to me that had more weight than the racial discrimination. I got robbed at knife point, and completely humiliated at knife point by 3 black guys. It's mad. It's most of the bad stuff that has actually happened in my life has been at the hands of my own. And that's scary within itself. It's well, who do I trust then? So a lot of my sort of teenage years and sort of growing up was just feeling I don't know who to trust then. So that was scary within itself. And it's and then that got me even more depressed, because it was I kind of hate myself because of how I was conceived. I kind of don't like myself anyway, because of something that I can't control, because of the color of my skin. I'm getting all of this abuse and this, that, and the other. And then the people that are supposed to be on my side have turned around and robbed me. I already feel like an outcast within my family as it is. Am I really an outcast? Do I just really not belong anywhere? And I think that was where it was that was where I made a concrete effort to be like, right, boom. Okay, I don't care about me. I don't give a fuck about me. All I want to do is just make my music and just make sure that my family's all right. So if I can get myself to a point where I'm like, boom, I can help my mum out with her bills. I can sort of show her appreciation for what she's done. Do you know what I mean? For me and my brothers and sisters growing up and trying to bring us up the best way that she could. Because when we all got of age and came out of foster care, we all started seeing our parents again and you know, seeing my mum on a much more regular basis than I was when I was in care. I think it's something that we all have as, like, you know, children. We want to get to a point where we can make our parents proud and make them, you know, look after our parents, you know, to make up to show appreciation for them looking after us and bringing us up and stuff like that. My parents weren't perfect. My mum wasn't perfect. She wasn't the greatest mother in the world, but she was the strongest. She is the strongest woman that I know. Do you know what I mean? And a lot of me does come from her. You know, a lot of how I carry myself and the principles that I have are a result of how she brought me up and the things that she'd been through, the struggles, the trauma, the abuse that she'd suffered. You know, that she shaped me into the person that, you know, I am today. And, you know, as much as we're not on the best of terms at the moment, do you know what I mean? Like, that's something that I can never take away from my mother. She will always be my mum. Do you know what I mean? I'll always love and appreciate her for bringing me into this world, taking a chance on me and loving me. Do you know what I mean? You know. But yeah, like, that was a point where it was like, right, my family are my core. What happens to me doesn't matter. But as long as my family are okay, then that's it. That's it. Because as much as I may not matter to the world outside, do you know what I mean? I was just a statistic going through care. Do you know what I mean? I wasn't, when I left foster care and I got sent out into the big wide world on my own, I had no assistance. No one taught me about bills, paying rent. No one taught me about budgeting or anything like that. No one taught me nothing. I had to figure all that out myself. Like, the care system in the early to like mid to late 90s was horrible. Absolutely horrible. They didn't give, like, they just didn't give a, they just didn't care. Or at least I felt like they just didn't care. Or we were just used as a commodity. We were just used as a way for other people, other families to be able to get wages and stuff like that. I had a really, really sort of jaded attitude and view towards the care system and the social services system. Even down to the counsellors, even down to the social workers themselves, the support workers themselves. Like I had a really horrible attitude towards them, because as much as the foster family was amazing, the actual people that were supposed to be really sort of advocating for our welfare just did not care. Do you know what I mean? Especially when, you know, when my brothers and sisters went back to their dads, I saw that as a complete betrayal to my mum. Like, my mum had asked for help and, you know, come to the decision of putting us in care as a result of my stepdad and the horrible divorce that they were going through and the abuse that she was going through as a result of wanting to leave somebody that she didn't love anymore. To put us back in his hands I saw that as the biggest betrayal to us and my mum that could ever be, and I will never understand it to this day. But I say all that to say, like, around that time, I just felt like I was just a number. Do you know what I mean? I was just a statistic. I wasn't even a name. Do you know what I mean? But okay, as long as okay, I can make up for what my mum has had to go through by being a good son, by, do you know what I mean, trying to be everything that was completely different to the older male role models that I'd seen around me. Do you know what I mean? But there was just this complete disregard for myself. I remember going through years I would just work all hours on end. I would come home, I would make music, I was getting into DJing, so I'd be out trying to get gigs, trying to get into as many clubs, and then if my family needed me, then I was over there for my family, my grandma, my aunties, my uncles. Who I've got 3 aunties that suffer from mental health. I've got an uncle that suffers from mental health stemming from like bipolar, schizophrenia, personality disorders, the more sort of well-known sort of illnesses and stuff. So I'd always had experience with mental health. My grandma on my stepdad's side, she suffered from dementia in her later years, and although I was too young to understand that was what it was, I did understand that something was different. Like, this grandma is completely different to my other grandma and other grandmas that I've met. So I'd always had experience with mental health, but not to the point where I would be able to sort of spot what was going on in myself. But I did see that something was definitely wrong. But I would put value and faith. I would end up putting value and faith in, I don't want to say the wrong thing, but just having none in myself. No value in myself. Like, if other people, as long as my family saw value in me, cool. But value not in terms of me as a person, but more in terms of what I can offer. Do you know what I mean? Or what I can be an example of. Do you know what I mean? Because again, I think every firstborn, oldest child will tell you, you're the first. You've got to set the example. You've got to show your younger siblings how things are supposed to be. There's a lot of pressure on the firstborn. There is a lot of pressure on the firstborn. Do you know what I mean? But that was the pressure that I accepted. That was the pressure that I thought would make me make a difference. Do you know what I mean? Nothing to do with my family valuing me just as a person, just as, Dilly. Do you know what I mean? No, just what I can bring to the table. Do you know what I mean? Okay, cool. That's what I'm going to do. Do you know what I mean? But then over time, things would snap in my head. I'd get super depressed. I wouldn't want to get out of bed, and I would lose jobs. You know what I mean? Something would switch and I'd just be like, right, yeah, I don't want to do this job anymore. I went through so many jobs. It was crazy. It got to the point where I lost that many jobs that I was absolutely amazing at interviews. I'd lose a job and within a week I would have another one because I was so good at interviews. I'd done that many interviews that I knew what employers needed to hear, regardless of what job it was. And if it was a job that I didn't have experience in, then I knew what to say to make them think, okay, we can take a chance. We can take a chance on Mr. Dennis. Do you know what I mean? But the reasons why I couldn't hold a job down is because I'd get to a point where it's like, yeah, I'm doing good, I'm earning money, I could do this, I could do that, and then something would switch and I'd just be like, I hate this, I hate all of it, I hate my life. All I want to do is just make music and just stay in my room and not speak to anybody. Or if I am speaking to anybody, it's on internet forums because, they can't see me. They don't know the life that I've been through. Do you know what I mean? Especially if I'm in a job and then something would happen with my mum, because my mum suffers from sickle cell anemia, and that, so she would have a lot of crises in regards to, her immune system. It got to the point where it was like, as soon as employers started to see that, okay, this person's not as reliable as we need him to be, that just be like, right, before you tell me that I am useless and I'm a dickhead and I've lost my job, I'm just going to quit my job. I'm going to beat you to it, so then you don't have to tell me that I'm shit, because I know I'm shit. I know I'm shit already. I don't need you to tell me, so safe, boom, and it's all good. I'll get another job next week anyway. Do you know what I mean? The fear of it being confirmed that I am nothing. The fear of being confirmed that I'm useless. The fear of it being confirmed that I don't matter. And that has spilled over onto so many things. The fear of just amounting up to my biological father being a toxic male, a toxic, horrible, violent, disgusting person that would be so horrible as to rape somebody. The fear of being anything like that is something that haunted me for years. And because it made me so depressed as well, it was just magnified tenfold. So when it came to like relationships and stuff like that, like I would get into relationships with really like damaged females that have been through previous relationships where they've been abused, they've been violently abused or sexually abused, and I'd enter these relationships and I wouldn't leave, even though it wouldn't be working out. I wouldn't leave because I wouldn't want them to see me as another one of those people that have hurt them. So I would fight to change their mind, change their perception of me. And if it didn't happen, then that's another dig on myself. That's another beating that I'm putting on myself. Do you know what I mean? So I went through a lot of, especially when like I went through a lot of like sort of really broken relationships and toxic relationships in a bid to sort of not necessarily prove to myself, but just to prove to other people that, or to try and stop them from placing label on myself. Do you know what I mean? Again, to stop them confirming what I already thought about myself anyway, you know? So I went through a lot of toxic relationships, a lot of really like sort of just broken relationships that I knew that I couldn't fix, but I tried to anyway, you know? It's mad actually talking about it and actually going through. Like I've tried to record this podcast so many times. I think this is the furthest that I've got, but it's mad actually like really sort of going back through and sort of realizing how much these things affected a lot of other stuff growing up in my life, a lot of other experiences in my life. Really and truly, it's crazy. I realized that I was putting a lot on myself, even though I didn't hold any value in myself. I was putting so much pressure on myself, regardless anyway, to just do something, just be something. I was putting pressure, what I see now is just societal pressures. Get married, leave school, get a job, get a good job, save up, get a mortgage, get married, then have kids and rare. A lot of that is societal, like, do you know what I mean? Like, I don't think I'm gonna get married in the traditional sense, you know, in my life. But again, that's another fear that I've got now, sort of, you know, leading on from the PTSD, do you know what I mean? The fears that I've got now is like those traditional things, you know, aren't going to happen ever, you know? Like one of the things that I really want now, and that is a family. And when the traumatic situation happened, because it was to do with children as well, it really sort of corrupted my outlook on having kids. Like, everyone that knows me, like, if you know me, and especially if you've got kids and you know me, you know that I love kids. You know that I'm good with kids. Do you know what I mean? I love my nieces. I love my nephews. I was there a lot as they was growing up, or at least I tried to be there as much as I could with them growing up. You know, I always had a sort of maternal instinct with kids, especially with babies. Like, I can, like, put it this way. Like, my sisters and my brothers used to love it when I come round, because they could just leave me with the kids and it'd be fine. And I'd be completely focused on the kids, like playing with them, just talking to them. If they need changing, I'll change them. If they need feeding, I'll feed them. If they need burping, I'll burp them. But really just spending time with the babies and interacting with them, and just, you know, just being wrapped up in, you know, my family, my nieces, my nephews, man. Babysitting, loved babysitting with them, even though I couldn't do it that often most of the time because of work and, you know, music and stuff like that. I just loved being around my nieces and nephews, and that sort of spilled over into being around my friends' kids and stuff like that. I'm not I'm not anybody's godfather or anything like that, sadly. But you know, I love kids, and I can't wait to have kids one day. Like it's I think now, especially with the age that I'm at now, and I'm not going to tell you my age, but especially with the age that I'm at now, like more than anything, I want to have my own family. Like especially because of how I grow up, I want to be able to bring up a family and, you know, break the cycle, break a lot of the cycles that me and my family went through. Do you know what I mean? And since the traumatic incident, you know, over 10 years ago, that sort of viewpoint has been tainted in a way. It's been corrupted in a way because a lot of my flashbacks and a lot of my nightmares involve, you know, young members of my family. You know, I worry, I'm scared that, you know, if I do have a child, am I going to have reminders of my traumatic situation when I have that child? And, you know, these are all the things that I thought that my mum would have about me. And I suppose in that sense, you know, maybe I feel like I've not had that answer in regards to, do I trigger my mum in a sense? But I started to worry that maybe my kids might trigger me. Do you know what I mean? Maybe, do you know what I mean? I started to worry that, you know, when that traumatic situation happened, I did get into a relationship afterwards, but, you know, that relationship broke down because I wasn't dealing with my PTSD. I didn't realize at the time that I had PTSD. I didn't understand why I was having flashbacks, why I was having so many nightmares about the situation, and it got to a point where it was too much for me to handle and it was too much for my partner to handle at the time. But because that relationship broke down, and it was probably one of the best relationships that I'd had, where there was no arguments, you know, my partner wasn't broken from a previous relationship, you know, she was independent, she could hold her own, she could look after herself. So, you know, throughout that relationship, it did put a lot of focus on me, which again was scary. You know, I didn't have someone to fix. I didn't have a project. I just had somebody that loved me for me, warts and all, depression, fucked up family and all. They just loved me for me, and they wanted me to get better. They wanted me to focus on me and be happy in myself. And that was completely scary. That was completely foreign to me. And I didn't know how to deal with it because that just hadn't been a focus or a priority for so long in my life. Like, when I look back and I realize how much I wasn't looking after myself, it's absolutely mental. Like, for the longest time, I fluctuated between 8 stone and 9.5 stone. Since high school up until, 6-7 years ago. I'm a 5'8", 5'9", do you know what I mean, tall man. Like, that is terribly underweight for my height. You know what I mean? But I survived like that for years on a cigarette diet. I hardly ate. I didn't eat breakfast. There was a lot of days where I wouldn't eat anything for a whole day or 2 days. I would forget to eat. But I would be doing so much. I would be doing bookings, DJing, running about after my family. Like, you know, most of my family lived in North Manchester. I was living in South Manchester. So I'm traveling from one end of Manchester to the other on a regular basis, working, like doing full-time jobs. You know, being at home, making music, staying up for hours on end. Do you know what I mean? And because music was such a release for me, I was happy to, you know what I mean, be tired, but I'd made a sick tune, or at least what I thought was a sick tune the night before. Like, but for the longest time, like, I was terribly malnourished. I was terribly underweight. Do you know what I mean? But that's how much I just didn't care about myself. I moved so many times, so many different homes. Like, so many times, like, it was ridiculous. I never had anything stable. I'd moved to so many different areas. I'd never had like a stable friend group or anything like that. And again, that was through to fear of, if people really found out about me and found out about where I came from, then they would hate me. They would start calling me racist slurs again, and And that wouldn't necessarily mean that I would hide my blackness or I wouldn't be me. Do you know what I mean? But it does show that there was things that I was ashamed of. There were things that I was ashamed of in my life. I didn't have a normal family. I would see people talking about their families, and do you know what I mean? Everyone getting together and doing this and going on holidays, and the father is around, the dad's about, and he cares, and he takes time and sits down with his sons and his daughters and all this kind of stuff. I didn't have anything like that. I was in care. I was living with a family that weren't my own. Do you know what I mean? And even the dad weren't even in that foster family. So I didn't have anything like that. It was like, do you know what I mean? But because I was into music and, I could make a tune, do you know what I mean? And I'm a bit funny, do you know what I mean? Cool, do you know what I mean? But, my friends would always be like, oh, rah, because so much was going on in my family at the time, over the years, do you know what I mean? So much has happened with my family. It would get to a point where they would start to clock like, oh, good, rah, you don't really talk about your family much. And rah, like, you'll be here and then next minute you'll have to run off to your mum, and do you know what I mean? And you know that your mum's not well, but you don't really talk about them much. And yeah, man, there was a lot of shit that I was ashamed of in terms of my family. Like, I started to realize that in terms of my outlook on life and the world around me was different to my family's. And maybe that was because I stayed in care and they stayed in the ends. Maybe it was because I was more into school than my brothers and sisters. I don't know, like, but yeah, man, like, it got to a point where my outlook was completely different. Like, I'll put it to you this way. It got to a point where so much bad stuff that was happening, I started to just get sick of it, and I was just like, no, I don't want any of that. I'm not going to put myself in positions where things like that can happen. Do you know what I mean? Are you guys not sick and tired of any of this? Are you not sick and tired of, like, having to call the police to the yard for the domestic violence, or having you getting arrested again and this, that, and, like, are you not sick of, like, people talking behind your back and causing all of this shit? Jay, you're not sick of everybody that's surrounding you, like, constantly trying to bring you down? Like, you're not sick of that? Like, it was weird, but it was mad. But again, like, I was scared. I was scared that if people knew that my family was fucked up compared to other families that are out there. And now I realise that everyone's family's fucked up. Nobody has a perfect family. Like, nobody at all. Do you know what I mean? But being black, being from a broken home, coming from a care system, and knowing that I was conceived from rape, it's a lot. It's a lot. And then not really having a high opinion of myself anyway as a result of all of that. Of course I'm going to be scared of people finding out the truth about me. Now everyone knows, all my friends know, all my real friends know about me and my family, and they know why I am the way that I am. And I'm thankful for that. I'm thankful that I have people around me that understand what I'm going through to an extent, and are willing to take the time to try and understand what I'm going through. But yeah, there was a lot of fear, and then with the PTSD, do you know what I mean? With that causing a breakdown that causing one of my best relationships, that just placed even more fears into my mind. Like, is this what all relationships are going to be like now? Am I going to have no control over how my relationships go because of my mental health? Like, is that going to affect how I feel about having kids, about raising a family? Is that going to affect how I see my kids if or when I eventually have them? You know what I mean? Like, is there even any point in me trying to have kids now at the age that I'm at now? You know what I mean? Like, am I going to be able to get into a relationship where I'm even accepted with all of this baggage that I've got? There's so many fears that I have now of how my life is going to be and how my life is going to turn out and stuff, that as much as it caused me to close off then, it's still causing me to close off now. There's a lot of times where I feel like, what's the point? What's the point in even thinking about that? It's not going to happen. What's the point in even trying to be positive about something like that? It's not going to happen. I'm still scared that I don't matter. And now that during this sort of mental recovery journey, you know, I've had to cut my family off. The biggest core part of my family, the biggest core part of my life that gave me purpose isn't there anymore. So who am I? What do I amount to? I know I've got music. I know that's scary within itself, because without music, who am I? Who would I have been if I didn't have music? You know, these are the things. These are the things that still run around in my brain. These are the things that still scare me. You know, at some point, I'm just gonna have to try and face them and try and get myself to the point where I feel like I deserve to try and get these things. You know, I feel like I still have a lot of things that I need to come to terms with in terms of what has happened in my life, in terms of how these things have affected how I see myself and how I see my life going. I suppose I still have to work on rewiring my brain when it comes to things like that. I think that's where I have to keep telling myself that, like, yeah, it's still a journey. Like, I have to keep stopping myself from getting frustrated that things aren't changing or things aren't getting better as fast as I would like them to. You know, especially, you know, as being diagnosed with PTSD so later on in my life. I suppose looking back at certain things, like all the times I got beaten up, I suppose I have experienced elements of PTSD from an early age and stuff, because I still get really anxious about certain things in certain situations. But, you know, in terms of what happened recently, I think because it's hit me so later on in life, where I'm at a point where I feel like I don't have as much time. I think for some people, when they experience huge bouts of mental illness later on in their life, your fears change. The things that you're scared of completely change. Some say stay the same, but they're either, you know, embellished. Do you know what I mean? They're exacerbated now, or they're minimized as a result of age, as a result of growing up. Do you know what I mean? I suppose I've got to try not to see life that way. I've got to try and find things to help me change my perspective. And I know it doesn't sound like I'm really putting much faith in what I'm saying and that, but, you know, I think that's the scariest part about it. Like, trying to develop enough faith in myself to just give these things a shot and to not be scared of these outcomes and not be scared of rejection later on in life, even though rejection does hurt a lot more later on in life because you don't have the confidence to, do you know what I mean? Like when something breaks down in terms of a rejection from a job, it matters a lot more later in life because you don't have age on your side to be able to be like, okay, I can try for a different one. Or, you know, in terms of to feel like, okay, employers may take a chance on me because they feel like they can get years out of me. Do you know what I mean? Like, and I know this relates a lot to age and stuff, but again, like I said before, it's because certain things have happened later on in my life, you know. So yeah, it's weird. It's weird. I'm trying to figure out a way of being able to end this first episode on some sort of at least more optimistic note. But I suppose that's part of it just being a real and candid conversation, really. You know, things like this don't always have to be glamorous. This don't always have to be entertaining and uplifting. Hopefully, what I'm bringing to the table, having these conversations, is just it being real. It not being glossy. It not being changed to be all fluffy and cute, and it's just real. And that's the stage where I'm at in my life at the moment. Being real with you and being totally real with myself. And I think, if anything, when it comes to dealing with your mental health, the best thing you can do is be real with yourself. You know, because once you can be real with yourself, then you can take real actions to trying to better yourself. And realizing these are all the things that I'm truly scared of. There's other things that I've not mentioned that I probably will get into later down the line, you know. But yeah, these are some of the things that I am scared of, and these are some of the things that, yeah, I definitely know that I need to work on. And hopefully having this conversation, it's definitely helped me. It's definitely given me a lot to sort of reflect on. But hopefully it helps you as well, to everyone who's listening out there. So with that, thank you very much for listening. I hope you have an amazing day, an amazing week, amazing month, an amazing year. Until next time, take it easy, and blessings to you all.